Welcome to Seat Time, everybody, the off-road show that brings you all the results, news, and online shenanigans that make being online a good time. We'd like to say thank you to Fly Racing for their support of Seat Time. Please go check them out at flyracing.com. Welcome to Seat Time, everybody. So episode 111 here on this lovely Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time in, I guess, North Texas. We'll go with North Texas tonight. Obviously, we're in McKinney, but hey, we'll just call it like it is. It's North Texas. There's you go, don't know. We had all kinds of ice the past couple weeks, and now it's a balmy 70 degrees in Texas. So as we mentioned, this is definitely the bipolar state. It cannot figure out what the winter it wants to have. I just wish that we'd get a little bit of rain and not ice, so that way we could have another mud run, because those are always fun, especially when your fingers are frozen and you're just beating yourself up. It kind of gets interesting. So, episode 111, this will be our last show for the year of 2013. Now, luckily, we've only got 2 weeks to go, and then we'll be right back, but much-needed breaks for everybody. Obviously, as well, holidays fall right the day after Tuesdays. We don't want to be up doing all this kinds of stuff, but we will be back for 2014. So, I guess I say great 2013, everybody. We're going to get together later tonight and do our little video. So definitely in the next couple of days, be on the lookout. We do hope that we are going to do a much better job than KTM did of 12 Days of Christmas. We shall see. So, of course, Seat Time brought to you by Fly Racing and Powersport Graphics and Stillwell Performance. All those guys are awesome supporters of the show. We thank them very much for their support. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the services that they offer later in the show. House cleaning. We have a sale going on right now. So free shipping. If you go to seattime.bigcartel.com, everything right now is free shipping. Just go in there, order some gifts. I'm the one that ships it, so of course I'm going to do my darndest to get it out to you guys before Christmas. So please get in there and check it out. Yeah, what else we got there? Steven, what do you think? Any other fun stuff?
That sounds good.
That sounds good. All right, cool. So our guest for this evening is going to be Jason Weigandt. You can Google his name as many times as you want. You just have to remember to spell his last name correctly. It is a little difficult. Luckily enough, Google is smarter than I am. It autocorrects, and bam, I catch it every time when I was trying to stalk him before the show. This is going to be interesting. But before we totally get into it, Mr. Weege, how is your evening going, kind sir?
It's going all right. As you can see, I could probably stand to decorate my office a little bit better. This is the first time I've really seen what it looks like behind me at my desk. And then I see what you have behind you. It's a lot more impressive. So kind of depressed already.
That's it. Well, I'm going to cheer you up a little in the fact that I just got in my FMF shirts, my Caselli shirts today. So supported the Caselli Foundation. So we get a little bit more decorating as well. So I'm stoked on that. So maybe you could go to FMF and order your own, and then you could start hanging those on the wall or wear them.
Yeah, I did get a handful of a couple different kinds of Caselli 66 stickers they were handing out at the last Endurocross there. But yeah, I got to get in on the T-shirt thing.
For sure.
So, yeah, okay, that might be my first move. If I now know I need to decorate these walls, that might be the first thing to do it with.
Yeah, it does look a little bland. I thought you had a little bit more energy in your life, but apparently when you're working, you're just all focus.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Anything outside about 6 inches around my laptop, there's no real point in any of that. It all happens right in this box right here, and anything beyond that I don't really need to worry about.
I hear you.
That's not getting work done.
6 inches is all I'm working with, too.
Hey, sometimes it's just how you use it.
I hear that. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you know Jared Bolton correctly, or at least know of him for the GNCC.
Yeah, in person, and yeah, I have met him in person. We do know each other, absolutely. Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you a heads up. He is in the chat room, and he has planned to make sure that we're littered with fun news and events. So we may not bring up all of those, but at least the chat room will have tons of information on you as the night goes on.
I say bring as much as you can out here in the open. Bring it out of the depths of the chat room and bring it onto the show. I have nothing to hide.
I like it. Which is fun, because when I was listening to... Now, let me, I guess, kind of explain why I wanted to talk to Mr. Weege, to Jason, and have him on the show tonight. I listened to the Steve Matthes Show from November 26th, was that podcast specifically, and you guys said... it was interesting because it was 2 hours long. You could tell that you guys were just going at it and just talking about anything and everything. And that was
we were going at it.
That's the one where we find out, how your love for four-wheelers and how your dad wouldn't let you have a dirt bike. That's right. You were a flagger. You worked at Disney. and then how you slowly worked your way into the industry. So if anybody wants to go listen to it, it's actually a really interesting story and a lot of fun. One of the things that you guys did mention on that podcast was what kind of drew my attention to being like, you know what, I think he has more to say on this subject, so I want to get him on to be able to talk to him about that. So this podcast was done right after the Vegas Endurocross. So I think Endurocross was on the mind. It was one of the things that you guys were discussing. And you kind of mentioned it. Let me see if I got it in my notes exactly how you said it. It was kind of funny. But it had to do with the fact that Endurocross has to be careful because they could get so big and the riders could get so specialized that people, the fans, might have trouble, I guess, kind of catching a hero or finding, understanding who these top people are that are winning. And if people are able to just come off the street and maybe get a chance at winning, that it's not good for the sport. And now, I kind of listened to that segment a lot, but I wanted you to kind of give your more in-depth thoughts on that kind of discussion here, and then that way we can kind of banter and go back and forth about it.
Yeah, to give you an idea of what we were talking about, it's something that's affected a lot of these different dirt bike sports. It's, I think, what actually led to the death of Supermoto. When Supermoto, do you remember that thing taking off like a rocket?
Yes.
And then disappearing?
It was in X Games and all that stuff. Yeah, it was huge. And
what happened, I think, with Supermoto, one of the big draws right off the bat was not only was kind of a new form of racing that people hadn't seen much. I know that they had it in the early 80s on ABC and they were doing it in Europe, but for the most part it was fairly new. So there was just a curiosity factor. But also, man, when those first Supermoto races started, the guys who had racing them were Jeremy McGrath, Kerry Hart, Mike Metzger, Jeff Ward, the Bostrom brothers. I think Nicky Hayden did it. It was like the who's who. The greatest legends of road racing and supercross and off-road were all racing together. These were huge names that everyone knew. And those are the guys that were winning at first. But then other riders who weren't as well known, maybe they hadn't won pro motocross titles or hadn't won any road race titles, they started seeing that as, wait a minute, this could be the thing. I was never quite good enough on the dirt bike. I was never quite good enough on the road race bike to win at the highest level. They were certainly good riders. They saw that as their chance to make it, and those riders started to win. And then once you had a series that was now being won by relative unknowns or ringers from Europe and things like that, I think that a lot of the curiosity was gone. Now, partially also the newness had worn off, and maybe people just didn't like the concept so much. But I think it really hurt, and it happens to a lot of sports. Arena cross, I think, is like that. Everybody always talks about the heyday of arena cross. And what they always talk about is when riders they knew from Supercross came to race Arena Cross in their later years. Nowadays, most of the guys who are good at Arena Cross, that's all they've ever done. People do not know them from Supercross first. So with Endurocross, that started the same way Supermoto did. Ryan Hughes won the first one.
Yeah.
And then it was Ryan Hughes and John Dowd. And then it was David Knight. Guys who had won a lot. Nowadays, most of the guys racing it outside of, say, Mike Brown, the most success that they've had in their career is just in Endurocross. So it gets a little dangerous sometimes, I think, to expect fans to pick up on, well, we don't even really know if these guys good? I don't know. I've never heard of them before. Right.
So say like in the Supermoto bit does it not come down to maybe the promoters in those situations to kind of say, hey, maybe people aren't realizing who this unknown guy that just came off the street and won a couple times. Is it on their shoulders to maybe kind of say, hey, we need to promote this guy a little bit more so that the fans start to know who he is, so that then they start to root for him, opposed to going, who is that guy? I don't want to go watch a bunch of nobodies. And this is obviously speculation, so.
It can help. I started in GNCC. 2001 was the first year I was working for that series. And the first couple of years I was there was ridiculous how many riders we had. I think like 2004 was like a real peak. The money was really good at that point. Guys were coming over from other series. Guys were coming out of retirement. Old guys were not retiring. There was enough money on the line to bring those guys in. I mean, you had Rodney Smith, who people knew as a motocross guy, and Fred Andrews, who they knew as a motocross guy. Scott Summers came out of retirement. Everybody knew who he was. Mike Kudrowski was there. There were so many names. And then in 2005, Juha Salminen came over from Europe, and he dominated like no one could dominate. no one had ever. I think actually nowadays it still affects the way GNCCs are run and GNCCs are won. He is the first guy that I had ever seen that could lead a 3-hour race from beginning to end, not crash, not run into lap riders, not fall down, not make any mistakes the whole time. Back in the day, like 10 years ago in that series, even the guy who won had like 9 awesome stories of like, I almost hit a deer, I got taken out by 3 lappers, I got stuck in the mud, I looped out on this hill. Yuha would just cruise around in like 3rd gear all day long, no problem. And then eventually we realized, well, that's all you're going to get. So we have to try to build this guy up, and you have to try to build it as you're seeing the greatest of all time, or you're seeing something that you'll never see before. You got to catch this while it's hot. So it is something that I even went through when I worked for a series that had that situation. But there's only so much you can do. Obviously, they've done a great job. I think everybody respects what Taddy Blazusiak has done. I don't think anyone believes he's a slouch.
Right.
I got to think that when you guys, you cover a lot of different off-road, certainly his name's got to rank right up there with anybody, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think they did a great job. And then you look at a guy like Cody Webb, and then like a Colton Haker. Those guys were trials guys, and as trials guys, barely anybody knew who they were outside of the trials industry. And even Colton Haker was not as well known as like a Cody Webb would be, and then a Jeff Aaron as well, until they started to get into the Endurocross, where I think it brought a lot of in the early days, it brought so many different forms of off-roaders together in the same building that never happened. You're like, oh, we got to meet these people and see these names, and it kind of was like, oh, cool, this Jeff Aaron guy is awesome. And then you start looking at his back and everything like that, or his past. And same with Cody Webb and Colton Haker. So it's really interesting how it has, the dynamic has been grown, and just so cool that those guys are now famous. But then Cody Webb still talks about going to college and all this kinds of stuff. Like
It is awesome for them that, and you got to be like Colton Haker. I'm sure you've talked to him. He's a great personality. That guy is media ready. Like, if the day ever came where he get the spotlight on him, he was going to embrace it. So it's awesome for a guy like that he's gotten that opportunity. But I announced the second Endurocross they ever had, and at that point, people didn't have practice tracks. There wasn't any place to practice it. First year, I think most riders didn't know what to expect. A lot of the top off-road guys didn't show up. The second year, it seemed like everybody from every series was there, and none of them had ever ridden it before. And the way they did it back then, they didn't even have practice. The riders walked the track and did a hot lap for time qualifying, and then they raced. Yeah. That was it. So by the end of that night, I have never seen a group of riders more pumped up. Most of the riders went and did a track walk after the main event, because they were just like Mike Lafferty. I remember, at that point he was like 6-time enduro champ, and he's like, I've never jumped over tractor tires before. I want to look at that. I want to figure out how to do that. I want to build that. I want to try it. So I think it took a few years for all those guys to go through. Some of them turned out to be really good at it. Some of them turned out to be not so good at it. Some trials riders, like you said, who maybe even weren't thinking about it at that point, eventually became the specialist. And it's awesome that the series is big enough to give those guys a place to race. But I'm sure if you go around the majority of casual motorcycle fans and say Cody Webb has won 3 races, they'd be like, well, I've never heard of Cody Webb. But if you said Ryan Hughes did, they'd be like, oh, that series must be gnarly. I like Rhino. Right. So every series has to fight this. GNCC is in the same exact spot. Caleb Russell and Charlie Mullins, their biggest accomplishments for the most part have been what they've done in GNCC. Charlie's got some enduro titles, but for the most part, they're GNCC guys through and through. It's a big difference from Shane Watts, who had won all over the world and then came over. Rodney Smith, who had won motocross races all over the world and then came over. So it's the series. The series can do what they want to build these riders up, but it's always going to be a tougher sell, and that gets dangerous sometimes.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's kind of a good tie-in for the fact that I was wondering about, with the off-road industry, people talk about money and the economy and all that kinds of junk. Thinking outside of the box, have you kind of come up with any, or do you have any ideas on how the off-road community could kind of start to try to revive itself? I think it's there. I think it is doing that for sure. But I guess it's always good to talk to people in the industry and kind of see what people are thinking behind the scenes and what ideas are out there, kind of in roundtable discussion.
One of the things that I found really appealing about GNCC when I was first involved was there was still a little bit more flexibility that those riders had, as opposed to the guys who were motocross and supercross guys. There's always a story that, like, Ricky Carmichael would never get on a bike if there wasn't a stopwatch around. There was no trail riding for fun. There was no showing up at a local track just to see what's up. It was straight business all the time. And at the level those guys are, that's all you can do. You cannot take a single day to have fun on the motorcycle. It's either part of the training program or you got to be on the couch recovering. I thought it was awesome. Again, I'll go with a guy like Lafferty. Lafferty had this huge box van, and then eventually had this huge bus, basically, that he had turned into. It was like a tour bus that had a garage in the back, basically. And I thought to myself, man, if there was a life I'd like to live, I think I would take what Lafferty has going on over any of the motocross guys. Now, he's not going to make as much money as them, but I'm sure he's making decent money then. He's a pro, so he was living large enough, and it was like, yeah, this weekend I'm going to drive down to this guy's house and we're going to go ride some trails here. Then I'm going to go hit this race. I'm not part of the race in that series, but it'll be fun. I'll get to ride with some of my buddies, and maybe I'll try a little of this, and maybe I'll try a little of that. And I think they all helped each other by dabbling in different series at different times. But unfortunately, nowadays, I think that there's just enough success that you can have if you really focus on one thing, where they've all kind of separated themselves. You do not see, I think, the same amount of crossing over from one type of riding or one type of series to another as you did back then. So, A, it's really hard to gauge how good are these guys because they never race against each other. And B, I think as a fan, the lifestyle just doesn't seem as cool as it does when it was like, man, all they do is load up a dirt bike and just go riding wherever they want every weekend. It doesn't get any better than that.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting. They talk about like the specializing and kind of how people are starting to focus in on, one sport or maybe one type of racing. And I think of Taylor Roberts, because he was doing all the works, Endurocross, in as much desert as he could find at the time before he had gotten involved with the Baja stuff. But he, last year, Monster Energy signed him to an Endurocross only deal, and now with KTM, that's what it sounds like. I'm wondering if he's going to wind up doing more, because obviously with the passing away of Kurt Caselli, and I don't know if with Ivan Ramirez is going to kind of be taking his spot. He's kind of like working towards that, I think. But I wonder if Taylor Roberts going to be doing more of that. But it seems like his deal is just specifically to Endurocross, and Mike Brown's the same way. It sounds like since he's going to be on Husky that he's going to have an Endurocross maybe only thing, but I didn't know if he was going to, since he lives on the East Coast, if he was going to do some GNCC racing, since he's never really done that before.
Yeah, and I think if Brown had his druthers, I think that's what he always wanted to do. I mean, it's kind of weird when he went to off-road. He's an East Coast guy, but pretty much all of his racing has been either Works or Endurocross, which are, and now Baja, which are primarily West Coast series. But I think this is all a byproduct of the off-road teams became much more professional than they were earlier. I think even a decade ago, they would basically just, each brand had 2 or 3 guys that were their off-road riders, and they gave them bikes, parts, a box van, and a budget, and just said, do whatever you need to do. Hopefully you win us a title. Pick a series. Pick 2 series. See you around, buddy. Like, they didn't even really have team managers. They didn't have PR people. There was nothing. It was just a dude on the road. Maybe he had a mechanic. And again, to any of us, I think it's actually a pretty cool way to go. You're just living on the road with your buddies, and there was just enough money for those guys to make that happen. But eventually, if you really want to win, and the manufacturers want to get the best return on their investment, they're going to make it more professional. They're going to say, listen, no, we're going to have 8 riders, 2 are going to race this series, and we're not going to risk them doing something else. And these 2 guys are going to do this series, and we're not going to risk them doing anything else. I would imagine that KTM isn't going to give Caleb Russell a blank credit card and say, go race wherever the heck you want, and we'll take our chances that that's not going to mess you up for the one series that we're paying you to win. Right. So I don't know how you go back. It's an awesome thing that there's more money and more professionalism, but at the same time, it has a little bit of a drawback too.
Yeah. Huh. I was thinking about, because we were talking about KTM, it made me think of a comment that David Knight said recently. Like, one of the reasons why he went to Sherco is he says like a team like KTM is so big now that they can't think small like a family. And he wants, and one of the big things he liked about Sherco was that he was able to talk to everybody involved, like that's involved in all the processes. Now, does anything like that kind of make sense to you, or do you think he's totally like it doesn't make sense, or do you think that KTM is at some point might be too big for themselves? And
it's so funny actually to hear that because it's all relative. On the motocross side, the strength of KTM is supposedly that they are smaller and they're more nimble than the larger Japanese brands. They're able to call Austria and get stuff made at the headquarters in Austria. For the Japanese brands to do that and do that quickly, it's like they might call Japan to change something in January, and they're like, okay, when you get next year's works parts in October, we'll work on that. And then if they get the works part in October and it isn't what they want, oh well, maybe we'll get something in 2 months, or maybe we'll get something next year. Whereas KTM seems that they can make stuff happen weekly or monthly. So it's all relative. I'm sure on the off-road side, KTM has a lot more red tape involved, a lot more levels than Sherco, but I wouldn't imagine they're that huge. But yeah, no doubt, Sherco probably has less people, or fewer people in between. It has its positives and negatives, though. You got to figure sometimes more people and more resources can bring more stuff your way too, right? So I think in that case, you just got to look at it both sides. I got to imagine, look at the success of KTM's program. They're doing something right.
Yeah, it looks pretty awesome. The resume that they have from 2013 alone is, I mean, I can't say for sure that they won like every off-road title, but I mean, when they pretty much sweep the GNCC series, that's damn impressive.
Well, I want to throw this one at you. I know you're the host, but I'm too used to asking questions, so I got to do it. KTM, yeah, they absolutely dominate off-road here. On the motocross side, they absolutely dominate the Grand Prix series in Europe. And I've heard from both the Euro GP side and the off-road side here that it eventually becomes a problem if they're winning so much and the other manufacturers, meanwhile, are pulling back. Like Suzuki doesn't have an effort at all, and I believe now it looks like Kawasaki might not either. Now that Taylor Robert is gone and you haven't heard a replacement announced there. Is it actually good for KTM to eventually be dominating to this degree? I think there are people at KTM that are actually worried about that. Like, all we're doing is beating ourselves, and what does that prove? Do you think it's a problem?
Who is it the real problem for, I think, is because in the off-road world, I totally was a Yamaha guy to the 2008, 2009 when I bought my 2009 250 XC, my first KTM. And now I think KTM does such a great job of making you feel a part of the family. Like, there's the bleed orange. Like, they make you feel that. Like, you become part of that. And their marketing does that, all the way that they handle themselves, the way that they run their business, the way that they sell their bikes. And I don't think any other manufacturer does that. You might get that at a shop, like at a Yamaha shop, where this one guy gets it, and he really understands and brings you into that family. So is it going to be bad for KTM? Not in the sense that people aren't going to be reliable to them. I think as long as they keep that up, they're still going to find it. Now, when people are out there and all they're seeing is a guy on a KTM beating a guy on a KTM, yeah, that's a tough one, because it's kind of like, well, I mean, if we had a Yamaha out here, if we had a Kawasaki, but would it change any because of the fact that then they would be more motocross and KTM still is kind of the off-road race-ready bike?
I think KTM, like any manufacturer in that situation, would. I think they would obviously much prefer to win the title and beat 4 other factory teams from 4 other brands than only beat themselves. Now, we follow it closely enough to know there was a time when all those teams were there and they were doing really well anyway, and maybe they even discouraged those teams enough to discourage them from racing at all. We know that they were able to do it legit. They're not just winning because the other teams left. Right. But people have short memories. You and I probably know that, but some people might be showing up at the races and wondering, well, of course they win. They look like they're the only ones that spend money. But we know that even when everybody was trying and was building even off-road bikes, KTM builds a good product and they have a good race team. So it is kind of unfortunate right now. I think they're almost so dominant that it's somehow actually not making them look as good as they really are. If that makes any sense, I think that's actually what happens. No,
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's something I honestly wouldn't have thought of. And so, I mean, I think it's definitely something to pay attention to. I think you're right as well that there's guys at KTM that are like, that's probably half their job is making sure that they are finding a way to not, just beat themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm not a genius coming up with this. I mean, it's people from KTM that I've heard this from. They want other manufacturers to be out there. And the Husqvarna deal, I don't know necessarily how it's going to affect things in the United States in the short term, but they've actually gone out and said on the European side that specifically the 250 class in the Grand Prix Motocross, MX2 they call it, it is basically like you're either on a KTM or don't even bother showing up. The level of dominance to have in that class is ridiculous. And I think they've now said, okay, if no one else is going to challenge us, we will just put another brand out there ourselves. If that at least makes it look like we're beating somebody. So I wonder, and once they get this Husqvarna thing rolling here, if that brand won't almost be used as KTM's rival brand. They will have to put their own rival team out there.
I just there's we could talk so much about the whole Husky thing. It's so cool that this is happening. I really thought though that we were gonna see a number 5 revealed on a white plate somewhere, on a bike. I just figured, because it would be the Dungey bike. It would just be a Husky. I don't know why, but apparently they're not going to have a full moto team for 2014, right?
No,
they're
not
just
having.
The
there were some rumors that they were going to do that, but they just basically said not ready. So
right.
Not here in the U.S. They will have it in Europe, but not here.
Okay, man, that's going to be so neat. And right now it's a rebranded Husaberg for sure. Maybe some minor touches here and there, but Husaberg for a while there were completely different bikes minus a frame and a swing arm. While they were still within the 10 years that they were under the KTM banner. Now that
remember the laid down cylinder bike?
Yes,
remember that one?
Yeah, and that
was awesome.
That was supposed to be to help with weight distribution, right? Kind of like the whole Yamaha turning the engine around. Wasn't that?
Yeah, it was some sort of gyroscopic deal where the engine was higher, but somehow it felt lower when you rode it. Actually, most of the people I know that rode it said it was awesome.
Yeah, and they were actually kind of upset when they got rid of it and went to the more KTM. Yeah. Was it the Unicam kind of setup that the KTMs have? So there was a slip-up. I think somebody accidentally posted a press release too early about the actual off-road Husky team that's going to come out. So we got Russell Bobbitt, Andrew DeLong, Mike Brown, and Jacob Argebright. I think that's a really strong team, and I'm super stoked for Argebright. He has consistently been getting better, faster. He's been more results, more on the podium at the Hare and Hounds. So I think with that full factory support, it's going to be neat to be able to see what he can do and where he could be once Ivan Ramirez is healthy and they're both out there battling at the Hare and Hound. It's going to be pretty neat. What do you think about that pick for the Husky team?
Yeah, he's definitely up and coming, and maybe that's almost a strength of being able to do it this way, because right now with the other manufacturers not really competing to take riders, KTM, they have the pick of the litter. Let's say Mike Brown does want to race GMCC. Why would KTM hire him to do that? They have the guys that just finished first and second in the series. Or if there's another guy that wants to ride Endurocross, KTM just finished first and second in that series. On and on it goes. I know that Baja was like this dangling carrot for them that they were trying to finally beat Honda. That was like the final thing left. And if you followed the way they had taken over the other series, you'd have to think that if not for unfortunately what happened to Kurt, maybe a couple years down the line, KTM was eventually going to dominate that too. So it's like, if there's up-and-coming riders, how do you justify a spot for them when they already have 2 or 3 great riders dominating every series they're in? So maybe this is the opportunity. If Kawasaki or somebody like that isn't going to go after a guy like Jacob Argebright, maybe Husky's going to be the only spot for him, because KTM's already kind of full with guys that have won already.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm excited. I think it's going to be neat, too, to watch as the Huskies develop into their own beast again. Maybe they're always going to have a frame, or they're going to have the same suspension, or they're going to have the same swing arm or whatever with the KTMs. Yeah. But they're going to allow to be able to do a lot of development. So it's going to be neat to see what the 2015s look like. But I think 2016 is probably going to be the year that we see the hot business, because wouldn't you say it's probably that R&D and development before they get to production is about 1.5 to 2 years out?
Yeah, that's what you hear. And I know KTM, again, in contrast to what Nider was saying, but KTM is relatively quick compared to other brands. I mean, the Ryan Dungey turnaround, getting a 450 out for him, that happened. They seriously pushed that forward like 18 months or something crazy. The only thing that I wonder, I don't know how far along they are in this. I mean, this Husqvarna thing, which happened, I think, less than a year ago still. I think it was only...
It was October is when it officially, I think, like, it was like September or October when it officially, like, blew up, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we're looking at just about a year. And that really surprised people. I know people that work for Husqvarna that literally had said about 60 days before that, you know, they had meetings. This is the 3-year plan. This is the 5-year plan. They had no clue that a sale was coming. So the point is, it's not like this was behind the scenes. They've been working on this for 2 or 3 years with a design of, we're going to do this once we get these bikes. I think they're really starting from a dead stop. And the only other thing you could think, well, maybe they had plans for what they were going to do at Husaberg. But that was kind of dead in the water. Like you said, they had turned into basically KTMs with, I think they had the plastic subframe was the only difference.
Yeah.
So whatever ideas they would be cooking up to make the bikes different, I think they're probably just getting started with it. So you're right. I'd say it's a while down the road. It kind of sucks, though, because I think people are going to judge that. Like, even when next year's bikes comes out and they're similar, they're going to say, oh, yeah, see, they're not any different. But 2 years is not really enough to determine that, I think.
I know. I bought 2013 300XC in, like, June of 2012, so I'm waiting until the 2015s come out to buy it. But as of right now, as long as I can sell enough sperm and at least kill one of my children so I don't have to support them anymore, I'll probably buy like a 2015 Husky 350. I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and go back 4-stroke, even though I don't want to work on them, but I will, just because I want to ride something different, and it's just that Husky. God damn, they made that thing look good. Like, good.
It does look good. Yeah, the color combo and everything, it's old school, but it still looks good. I find it curious, though, that you're going to raise money by, ironically, both killing a child and donating sperm.
Well, the good thing is... The good thing is that I can have fun and I can donate sperm, which is cool, and somebody else can have a kid. I mean, unfortunately, they could put up with my child, and then I get to right. maybe I'll just sell my kid, opposed to, because who wants to kill somebody, right? I mean, that's pretty crazy. But if I sell my child, then it's the same thing like giving sperm, except I don't get the enjoyment out of it, and then
you could still do that for free. More important, it'd be the difference between, you're basically, if you selling the kid, you're selling it assembled as opposed to, I'm just giving you a bunch of parts.
Yeah, and it's not like it's going to be brand new. It's not like it's an infant. I mean, it's still, it's already probably going to be walking and breathing by that point. Well, walking. Yeah, I don't know about the breathing part.
Well, breathing was not breathing was the previous plan.
Yeah, that's true. We want them breathing. We want them breathing for sure. It's interesting that you were talking about some of the other manufacturers that are not present in more of a factory sense at, say, at the GNCC and some more East Coast type of off-road racing, and definitely like Works and stuff like that. But who goes to Works anyway? So Obermeyer is going to, which used to always kind of be Obermeyer Yamaha, is now an Obermeyer Suzuki, because they've always sold Yamaha and Suzuki. So for 2014, their team is Obermeyer Suzuki. So they're going to be coming into the GNCC with Suzuki as a backing. Josh String is off the Kawasaki, but he said he's been riding the 450, the YZF, so he's going to have like an AmPro support deal kind of for that. And I'm sure somebody's going to be riding Cowie. Somebody's got to be on something. But then Thad Duvall is going to have factory backing from Honda. So is that any of that look like a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to maybe more people stepping and getting back in the ring? Or is it maybe they're just testing the waters?
The Honda thing is, that's been quite perplexing. In the heyday, when everybody had a ton of money to spend and everybody was spending a ton of money, they were the only ones that were not. I mentioned Scott Summers before. We all know what he did for Honda and the brand back in the 80s and early 90s, right? He basically built himself a factory team and eventually convinced Honda to make it a legit factory team. But at first he was doing it on his own. Like, he got his own box van, painted it to look like a Honda factory box van, and then eventually Honda's like, hey, this is awesome. We'll just give you some money to keep it going. Then, when it seemed obvious and everyone was doing it, Honda wanted, and Summers wanted to come back, it took forever. It was like 2 years of convincing Honda to come back and back the same guy they already liked backing in the past.
Right.
Really strange. Now, when no one is really investing in it, now they're coming back with an effort like they've never really had before. They only really came back because of Summers before. Really, if it were not for Scott Summers doing it pretty much on his own, there would have never been a Honda East Coast off-road effort of any kind ever until now. So that one has really surprised me. I mean, I think it's awesome. Honda does sell, legitimate off-road bikes. I think one of the things that holds the Japanese manufacturers back on the off-road side is, when you buy a motocross bike, it says for closed course competition only, right?
Yep.
So I think they're always a little bit scared of literally advertising a motocross bike being ridden in the woods or in the desert or what have you, because that is a closed course for the case of the race. But obviously what they're trying to appeal to is, look at how good this bike is on trails. But technically their bike is not legal to ride on trails. And then the Japanese have all these internal standards, I think, if they're going to build a legit off-road bike that you can buy. They had these crazy durability standards. Like, I guess you could buy, what is it, a CRF 450X? Is that what it is?
Yep.
Right. Like, I guess the idea is you could buy that bike, not change the oil for 3 years, not clean the filter, and just go out there and lug it around, and it won't break. And that's like an internal standard. It has to be able to handle that. It's awesome for the regular guy. That makes it maybe one notch below a KTM performance-wise, because KTM doesn't have these ridiculous internal standards. They basically build a motocross bike, soften the suspension, and say, here, you got an off-road bike now.
Yeah.
It's always been this weirdo dilemma for the Japanese brands. So I think that holds them back as well. Remember Suzuki came out with that RMX 450?
Yes. Ooh, there he is. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You stuttered on us. You were like,
The Japanese did not like me saying this stuff.
Google just turns you off.
Yeah. Do you remember the RMX 450?
Yes.
Yeah, it was out for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then
gone.
Yeah, did you hear what happened with that?
No, I never heard. No.
Here's what happened. Apparently, okay, so they do all this work. It's fuel injected. It's legal for the green sticker or whatever the heck in California. Like emissions and sound-wise, it's legal to ride on public land. And then somehow the government found out, oh, wait, no, it actually isn't legal. So Suzuki said, we must remove these bikes from the United States. They are never to be seen here again. We're not even going to sell them with a closed course sticker on it. We need to get them out of here. And supposedly they went to like Brazil and Canada, and it is like, you must never speak of this bike ever having existed. Like, it was that big of a deal. Like, we had a bike that was green sticker legal, and then there was a green sticker problem. We have dishonored ourselves. Let's pretend this never happened.
Wow.
So I think you just add all these weirdo layers of what it means to ride off-road and what an off-road bike is supposed to be. And then you get the European brands that, dude, they do not care. They're just like, what do you want? Okay, we'll build that. Go ride it.
Man. Yeah, and that's what I remember. So I came off of my 2007 WR250F Yamaha when I had bought my 2009. And I remember that
So
when I owned that 2007, I was just kind of like coming up in the A class and starting to and actually finish top 10 in some of the overall in some of the enduros here in Texas. But I can't believe the amount of shit that I had to go through to make that bike fast, to make that bike be able to ride fast. It was ridiculous. I mean, once we essentially turned it into a YZ, it was awesome. Like the little differences of the WR over the YZ were great. So that's why when I was like, God, we've got to figure something out when it was time to get a new bike, I just went with KTM because I ready to race. And I remember all the shit that I went through on that Yamaha, and I was like, I'm getting that. I'm getting the KTM. It says it's ready to race, and we're going to find out. So, dude, you just throw a leg over that damn thing and go. And that front brake, the first time you use it, coming off a Yamaha, you fucking endo like a son of a bitch because I went over the handlebar so bad. It was awesome. And I still ride KTMs because they're bitching.
Dude, I had I can now actually use the term past tense. I had a 2003 WR250F. And I only sold it about a month ago. So it's like my first public unveiling of past tense. So, yeah, so I get it. And I'm thinking 250Fs were pretty new at this point. I don't even know if anyone else even had one at all. Let alone Yamaha had two, technically. They had the off-road one and the YZ. So everybody knows in the early days of four-strokes, the worst thing about them was they could not start. Starting was awful.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, dude, why doesn't anyone... I've come up with the ultimate solution. They make a YZ250F with electric start. It's just called the WR. I got it figured out. So I'll just get it, and I'll just put a number plate in the front, and I'll race motocross on it, and if I stall, I'll have like... Yeah, dude, not even close. Not even close. And then the worst part was, so eventually, I guess, as you experienced with your '07, enough people know, okay, you got to do like these 9 things to make it right?
Yep.
So we had a guy who comes to our shop, our office, and he works on a lot of our equipment. And I was like, hey, man, do you know the regular drill of pulling the gray wire and taking out the throttle stop and all this stuff? And he's like, yeah, I've done it 100 times. I'm like, all right, you just, instead of me searching forums for a week, you just do it and I'll pay you for it. He's like, yeah, no problem. Then he comes back to the office the next day and he's like, yeah, I got bad news for you. Your bike was stolen.
I thought you were going to say he pulled the wrong wire, but apparently no.
Yeah, I was hoping. I mean, the bike running crappy would have been awesome. So yeah, it gets stolen. He first says that it got stolen out of the back of his pickup truck while he was at his shop. But then when we had to actually file the police report, then he unfortunately had to tell the truth, which was it got stolen out of the back of his pickup truck when he was parked at the bar at about 11:45 p.m. So he goes to the bar with a brand new dirt bike just tie down into the back of his pickup truck at midnight. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, the chick's not going to...
Believe it or not.
Go on. I say go on.
Like 9 months later, I get a call from the police. They have found the bike.
No shit.
They found the bike. Dude, riding it on the street because, whatever it is, like if you're dumb enough to buy a stolen bike, I guess all other rational thoughts out the window. So it's ridden on the street. It had literally quad handlebars on it. Like the handlebars had, like there was this much space between the crossbar pad and the and the handlebar clamps. It was in horrible shape, but it fixed it up, got it back running again, and the thing was still running fine like a month ago when I sold it. It was still running good. That, I guess those little internal standards we're talking about, the thing was literally ridden on the road for like 9 months, and I'm sure they didn't change the oil or anything. 10 years later, still cranks up, still runs strong.
Did the electric start still work?
No.
Well, it was almost perfect. That's okay.
Excellent question that you asked. Yeah, one time I raced it in a moto at High Point once. I go into the first turn, like huge pile up, 5 bikes laying on top of each other, and when I get up, it had like ripped the wire out, and I'm like, the whole point of this bike is now over. Whole point of having this bike just been ruined in 3 seconds.
Oh, dude, I love the magic button, man. When I went to my dad had an 03 WR, I think, and that was kind of when I was still on a little bit smaller bikes, and I was able to ride that around, and I was like, dude, they have magic buttons now on these things? I was like, why does every motorcycle not have this? And people are like, dude, because it adds a pound to the bike. I'm like, a pound to what? They're like, weight. I'm like, why do you want to kick this thing for... I was like, this is the shit. So... Awesome.
Yeah, I agree, man. It changes the way you ride, especially in an off-road race. Like, if you're just riding, okay, and you stall on a hill or whatever, like, okay, it's going to suck and you're going to be breathing heavy by the time you're finally back out of there. But whatever, if it takes a little time. But in a race, like, that could ruin... I can tell you, like, I raced at GNCC earlier this year, and I got this, like, right here, I got this crazy blister. And I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, I never get a blister anywhere near that when I'm just riding. And I realized... I was so much more worried about stalling the bike because the bike I had didn't have electric start.
Right.
Like, my hand was on the clutch the whole time. I was, basically riding the bike with nothing but the top of my hand the whole time instead of ever having it around the bar because I'm like, dude, if I stall this on a hill or something, that 2 minutes it's going to take me is going to ruin the race. Where if I had an electric start, I wouldn't even been thinking about that. Like, it was in the back of my mind the whole time.
Yeah. And I've easily stalled any of my bikes that I've had lately with electric start and not even, just trials it, stand up really quick, get the balance and push the button, sit back down and just go. Like, of course I'm a badass. Did you see what I just did?
Sure.
What up? But it did suck. So I was at an enduro and a good buddy of ours, Brian Story, been on the show a bunch of times. I saw him take his water bottle, like he was like, oh, I'm going to go ride we were at the gas stop or whatever, and he took his water bottle and shoved it in behind his number plate. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, well, I do this just so I can have a water bottle with me at the beginning of the next test. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, not have to do your Camelback all the time, all that stuff. So I was like, I'm going to do that too. So I go, shove it in there. Nothing feels like it's snagged or anything stupid happens. Well, I get there. Like once I get there and going and stuff, I try to start the bike and it doesn't do anything. And when I put the water bottle in there, I pulled the wire out of the damn plug. So I was like, oh my God, I'm like the first KTM in history that like the electric start's broken. Well, maybe not the first, but still, like I was like, damn it, same kind of thing. You're like, oh, it just lost all of its magic. Like
the whole point of the bike, gone.
It was something special, and it made me realize that sometimes what some people do, they do way better than the way that I can do it, and I should not try to emulate everything that everybody does.
Yeah, even stuffing water bottles into number plates, there's a skill there apparently.
That's why I stopped going to see hookers too. Apparently, you pick up.
People are more skilled with that than you.
I suck at it. It's no good. Everybody's like, so you have to pay me now. I was like, I thought you were paying me. And
I suck at spending money, so yeah, I'd probably be bad at it. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to know. So Ryan Sipes, fantastic job at the ISDE this year on one of the club teams. He has announced earlier. I haven't seen too much going on with what's been up, but I wanted to know if you've heard anything, new developments with his like maybe privateer team that he's kind of going to be doing for GNCCs, if he's actually still going to be doing that.
I think what I've heard is like what he was looking to have happened has happened. Like whatever he was looking to get, like I think it's gonna happen. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what that was. Like I don't know if he's like, if someone will just give me bikes, or someone will just give me $20,000, or someone will give me a rig. I'm not exactly sure what he was looking for, but I thought I'd heard that whatever he needed to get to say yes, he got. But I have no idea who that's with.
Yeah.
I could probably do a better job of tracking that down.
Hey,
but
man.
Maybe you could too. Maybe between the two of us, we could probably get the answer probably like right now.
I know. We could probably try to just Skype him into this call if we knew that he would be online. But, hey.
Wow.
Technology's nice unless you forget how to use it properly. And then it just
we have like 17 things at our disposal to get this answer. But,
I know.
Oh well.
Steven, here's my phone. Find his number. Seriously. There you go. All right. Steven's going to make that happen.
It's going to happen live.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. He's probably going to be like, whose number is this? What the deuce? So with that, the Suzuki coming into GNCC, I wanted to know if there's anything for you with 2014 where you're just kind of like, man, this part that they've changed for GNCC is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to the battle and the big class, like whatever it is, like the XC1 class. Like, is there anything about 2014 GNCC that you're just absolutely stoked on?
Last year was obviously so much of the Russell and Mullins show, or Muscle, as I accidentally called them and then pretended that I did it on purpose on one of the TV shows. I screwed it up and then pretended that I used it on purpose to make a cool word. I think if you look at it, everybody else that could have challenged him ended up having some problems. Like the beginning of the year, I was pumped to see Strang back in the series, and I think he thought that he was going to be able to put his own program together and be fairly competitive early. And then I think it was pretty obvious to him that, okay, this is going to be a lot harder to figure out all the things I need to figure out. He's kind of doing it on his own. He's not part of a team. It's the first year reading to Kawasaki. I think he switched like suspension companies and stuff like that throughout the year. Just working on it. I think he'll be better this year. Even if he switches brands, I think he'll just understand the challenge and what he needs to do to make it right this time. Obviously, Wibbly was not really Wibbly all year long, except for the starts. But otherwise, he was kind of dealing with an injury all year. So guys like that should be a lot better. So that should make it interesting.
Yeah. And this was 2013 was supposed to be Wibbly's last year in the States, wasn't it?
I think
or is
2010,
that just
11, 12, and 13 have all supposed to have been his last year. What's the deal with that?
I didn't know if it was the same thing where it was mainly more people talking. Like, so Jason Thomas. A lot of people thought that Jason Thomas said, I can't get the salary I want to feel like I can be competitive in the XC1 class, so I'm not going to race anymore. Everybody took that as he's going back to England. And so I had him on the show, and that was one of the things I asked him. I was like, well, everybody's saying all this. And he's like, guys, I'm married. My wife has a job here. I'm going to we're going to live here. Just because I'm not racing doesn't mean I'm not going to be in the States. So I wonder if maybe somebody's kind of always said, like, maybe Wibbly's ready to retire, but that doesn't mean he's actually ready to, like, move out of the country. I don't know, unless he's afraid of Obama.
Wibbly's situation is the opposite, though. I mean, his wife's from New Zealand, so I do think that whenever it's over, he would probably go back there. But he has said over and over, like, it's been like 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row with that. The rumor has been it's his last year, and I've straight up asked him, and he's like, I've never said it. Like, I don't know what. Maybe they just think I'm old, or maybe they're tired of seeing me. But for some reason, every year that happens. And, dude, this year was a bad year, and he had an injury. If he was ever going to not come back, he would not be coming back for 2014, and he still is. So he mustn't really want to leave that badly.
Yep, I agree. I'm excited because I think that a lot of people are going to step it up. Like we've seen, I think that there's going to be a lot of fire under a lot of people because Charlie Mullins and Caleb Russell were so dominant this year in the XC1 class. And we've got guys moving up from the XC2 class into the XC1 class like Andrew DeLong. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for that.
Dude, that could be really impressive. Yeah.
He's just like when the first time I ever talked to him, we were talking about racing and things that were going on, and he mentioned his what has kind of to me become the normal thing is the blood in the water. He was like, man, I smelled the blood in the water, and I was just like, ooh. I was like, that's the level this guy thinks on. It's very primal. Yeah. And so he's a guy that's going to be like, you know what? I don't care that I tore my arm, half my bone's sticking out. If I can feel like I can still be on the bike and twist the throttle, I'm going to try to chase that guy down and get the win. So I'm super excited to see him out there. I wonder if Russell Bobbitt's going to be doing any GNCCs or like a Nick Farringer if they're going to be out there because, you know, they're in that same specialized spot we were talking about with the Enduros, the National Enduros. But, you know, they come up and do some OMAs and things like that. Yeah. Bobbitt's the 2013 OMA champion. But I wonder if they're going to kind of start to get into the GNCCs a little bit.
Those guys always go fast, especially early in the race, because you know the mastery of just reading arrows and reading trail. I mean that they're not used to doing lap after lap after lap. Their thing is running a new, fresh trail for every inch of the whole day, right?
Right.
So when those guys come, they usually make some noise. So that makes it interesting. One other wild card I'll throw out there. I hope he can get it back on track. But Stu Baylor, if you remember him,
yep.
You know, coming through the ranks. Has all the tools, all the talent. KTM's got his back right now. But that wrist injury has been really bad. I hope it works. Plus, he wants to, you know, do it on a two-stroke, which I think would be pretty awesome as well. And KTM, I'm sure, would be pumped on that to have a two-stroke guy out there representing. So I hope he can figure out that wrist situation. It would really be a shame to have someone that young, that talented, that fast, works that hard, and then just have an injury just prevent it from ever coming together. He'd be much like DeLong, I think, you know, with the kind of fire he could bring into that class. It's just a matter of his wrist going to let him do it.
Yeah. So from the chat room, Bolton is giving us some information, and it does look like he says Bobbitt is in full capitals and quotes for GNCC, so he should probably be under the Husky banner. And then they were saying that Sipes is WMR with, you know, which is a KTM dealer, so then that would assume that he will be on a KTM, and that they were saying that somebody searched through his Twitter and saw a couple updates about WMR, and since they're a KTM dealer, I guess that's a good assumption.
Yeah, and they've had efforts in the series before with I think they were the Rory Mead team for a little while, and maybe even Nate Canny, I think, was their deal for a little bit. So those guys know what they're doing. That could be a pretty good fit. The motocross thing, it's like 50-50 how well it works. I think Stipes is probably going to be all right with it. What I noticed is, again, in the heyday, where it seemed like a place you could maybe get a couple more paychecks, and a lot of old motocross dudes were coming over and checking it out. Guys are older than Sipes is now, but, dude, I think most of these guys, once they've lived motocross life, they think they've had it hard. They've never ridden a rutted-ass 3-hour trail, and you're getting paid a fraction of what you probably were getting when you were on an awesome, freshly groomed Supercross track for 18 minutes. So it takes a certain mindset. Now, I think Sipes probably has it, but I've seen the gnarliest dudes. Like Ryan Hughes raced a couple GNCCs, and then he's like, dude, I'm not coming back. This stuff's too hard. And
I got actual blisters, guys. Actual blisters.
Yeah, I'm like, too hard, but you're Ryan Hughes. He's like, I'm not getting paid enough to ride 3 hours of this crap.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's like the toughest dude ever. And I know Dowd tried a couple of them, and every time he showed up, it was muddy. And I'm like, yeah, but I thought you liked riding in the mud. And he's like, not for 3 hours when it's just one rut all day long. Screw that.
30 minutes plus 2 laps, baby.
Yeah. So it'll hit you over the head pretty hard depending on who you are.
Yes, I think it's going to be an awesome year. I'm really looking forward to it. I really enjoyed the webcast this year. It gave ability for a guy like myself, as we were talking about in Vegas. You know, it was me and maybe the 200 other people out there sitting on their couches watching it. But hey,
Yeah.
You know, I really enjoyed it, and it sounds like they're going to keep it up. Unfortunately, they didn't hire me again to be the guy, but hey, you know, I'm just going to keep sucking at doing this, and we'll see what happens.
Well, they haven't hired you yet. You never know, man. You never know.
Man.
Yeah, I'm not saying that based on any rumors I've heard, but I just know how that operation works. People always accuse us of like these crazy conspiracy theories, and I'm like, dude, we're just trying to get the next race going. We're working day to day, week to week. So watch, stuff changes all the time. You never know, man. You might get a phone call like on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. Hey, how quickly can you be in wherever?
Oh, I did get I got an email from John Ayers like that. I think it was like a Thursday night before a race, and he was like,
okay, it actually happened.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm saying. That actually happened. Yes.
Yeah, and so I was just like, dude, I'd love to, but we've got a family thing, and it's like, so just, and I told him, I was like, just keep me in mind though, you know. So it's weird stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. So I did talk to like a Jason Hooper and a Jeremy Saylor, and then as I mentioned, Jared Bolton, just to kind of get some more information about you. And it's funny because you talk about the WR250, which is other people mentioned that I should ask you about. Of course, we as well talked about, what was it, your first race. So I want to know about when your dad drove all the way from New Jersey to watch your first race.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one. No, it wasn't my first race. It was the first one he was going to watch me. I raced a couple times before he had been there live. And then we had, I think this would have been 2003, our buddy Tim, who used to run the scoring and results for GNCC and Loretta's and all that stuff, he had used his he was using us basically as guinea pigs for a scoring system. So he decided to have the Office Championship Series, where we each have to run, like we ran one local motocross, one GNCC, one this, one that. He even set up a hill climb in like the woods behind his house, and we ran like a 5-race series. So the final round was going to be a motocross at High Point. So I told my dad, I'm like, I'm definitely racing this one. It's the last race of the year. It's in like October. Come on out. And he's like, I think my dad was in shock that I was actually racing motocross. So my dad drives out. It's like 7 or 8 hours to get there from Jersey. And we load up in the morning. We drive out. I think he's even surprised that we have like a whole system down. Like I know how to start the bike. I know how to load the bike. I know how to take the bike off of a ramp and put it on a stand. And I know the people that sign up. Like I have all this. I have riding gear and I know how to put it on and everything. So we go out for practice. It's shocker. It's High Point. It's super muddy. I was feeling pretty cocky. Like I had done decent for me in the first couple of races. By the way, the Office Championship is against like 4 other people. So you're always going to be like 4th at least.
Sweet.
So we get to the straightaway at High Point where they used to have a ton of jumps. Nowadays it's like just a big straightaway, Bradshaw Boulevard. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get to the top of this hill and I'm just going to jump. See what happens. Well, I took the first lesson of jumping on a motocross track, right? You can't just jump randomly. You need to either jump the perfect distance. Going randomly too far or too long is not going to work.
Right.
So I jump what I think is a tabletop. I can go any distance I want. In midair, I realize it's a double. I case it. Instantly, I just feel my ankles like explode on impact. And that jump section is right there next to the pits. So I just hang a right and go back to the pits, and I lean my bike up against the truck. I couldn't even put my feet in the ground. Like I leaned the bike against the truck, rolled over to lay in the bed of the truck, and then I just laid there. Because I couldn't like move, basically. So my dad's probably just watching practice. Like, when is he going to come around? Never saw me. When is he coming around? So I'm waiting for him to come back. He's waiting for me to complete my lap, which never happens. Finally, like, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes later, he finally comes back, and he's like, where were you? And I'm like, yeah, I got to go to the hospital. So I had to like teach him how to load up the bike, since I basically couldn't walk. I had 2 broken ankles. So I have to like explain to him how to like, no, this is how you get a bike off the stand. This is how you push a bike up a ramp. You got to put a loading ramp here so you can walk up the back of the truck. Then he'd take me to the hospital. Had to get my double air casts. Yep. And remember, if you listen to the Steve Matthes podcast, my parents weren't really pumped on the motocross thing due to the risk of injury.
Yep.
Yeah, so I proved him wrong big time.
Suck it, Dad.
Yeah, look, I could do 3/4 of a lap before I broke both ankles.
Should have stayed on quads, kid.
Dude, I haven't really proven myself at all. I mean, the first time I was gonna race, like the year before that, like I got a bike, I rode it for like 3 weeks, and I'm like, now it's time to go racing. And then I broke my navicular like instantly, like the week before I was gonna race. So yeah, I haven't proven anyone wrong on the danger part.
You and your navicular, man. That's what Stu messed up, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is what Baylor messed up. But I've heard when I broke mine, I heard all these horror stories. You know, mine's never healed. It's taken 2 years. It took a year. But they would always throw in the caveat of, well, of course I did cut the cast off and went back to hammering nails at my construction job.
Mm-hmm.
Or, of course I cut my cast off and went racing 2 weeks later. There's usually that little part they're leaving out when they talk about the wrist not healing. Like Baylor rode all year 2 years ago with that wrist broken, so that's what you get.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had my buddy of mine in a game, a very drunken game of some kind of like horse or basketball or whatever. Buddy just happened to check him. Bam! Hit the ground, put his arm down to catch himself, and like broke his navicular. And the doctor was like, "Dude," and he told him, he was like, "Don't fucking move this thing," because he was in a cast up to here, like for his navicular. It was like up to here.
Why?
And then, I don't know, but the doctor was like that set on like, don't move this thing, like because he's like this bone dies easily, like, and so he was like, okay, like, you know. So it's interesting.
It's a weird deal. It actually took me about 3 or 4 days to realize it was broken. Like I couldn't turn the keys. I couldn't turn the keys in the ignition. I couldn't turn the keys to open the door of my house, but pretty much everything else felt okay. So I'm like, clearly this isn't broken if it only hurts under these like 1% situations. I think that's what misleads people. The bone is tiny. It doesn't hurt like unbelievably bad like in normal life. It's not like if you broke your arm in half, you would know your arm was broken.
Right.
So I think it tempts you into thinking, I can get by. I can fudge it here and there. Do not.
No, that's dumb. All right.
Look at this. Full everything. No problems whatsoever.
That's some nice range
I've
of
worked
motion.
this thing a lot.
I bet you have.
It works great. Often with the computer in front of me too.
Selling semen is a profession you have to practice at.
That's right. That's how you buy new bikes.
I'm good at it. What can I say? Every 2 years, buddy. Every 2 years. So before we kind of close up here, just because we like to keep the show around an hour long, just because we have to pee, and then other people don't like to listen after that. So hey, but I wanted to know your opinions on kind of like what it seems to be a very large plethora of injured Supercross riders going into getting ready to start the season. With Bogle, Millsaps, Kennard, Musquin, Savacci, and Baggett. And that's just a fair number. I would imagine there's probably more that's just not as well known. Is there anything different? Is the sport just gnarly as it always has been, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, today I think we set a record. If you go to the RacerX site right now, the breaking news has 3 straight injury updates. I don't think we've ever had a three-peat, 3 in a row, 3 things in one day. Riders being injured, the Musquin, Baggett, and then another guy, Casey Hinson, who's a privateer, basically broke his face.
Oh.
So, yeah, everybody comes up with theories. If you just go through the comments section underneath each of those, for example, the 4-strokes are devil machines. They shouldn't have Supercross. They should only do motocross. My whole life that I followed it, most of the time, the championship at the end of the year just came down to who got injured and who didn't. So it's definitely not anything new. So for the most part, I always prescribe to, dude, this is the way it always is. Like, what are you kidding me? Like, any local race in 1982, people were walking around with casts on, and they're walking around with casts on now. That was the theory. That I always just go back and look on YouTube. You can look at videos.
Right.
They are going way faster in everything. And this isn't a motocross thing. If you guys go to theracertv.com and watch that final GNCC where Caleb Russell's trying to make up time and catch Mullins and try to win the title, I mean, dude, it's just way faster than anyone else has ever ridden. And that's not, people might say that's sacrilege. How can you say he's better than this guy or that guy? Well, bikes get better every year. Riders get better every year. Everything steps up every year in every sport. That's just natural evolution, right? I mean, I'm sure the bike that Caleb Russell's riding is way better than what they were riding 20 years ago. So, of course, he's going faster. Now, that's awesome in every sport that things are getting faster and better, except here, they probably are literally going an extra 10 miles an hour faster, it's going to have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
It's this weird thing where in almost everything on Earth, like, hey, computers get better all the time, and that's why you get to do your show. It is awesome. It's a pint full of awesome, right, that you're able to do this.
You know it.
Yes. But unfortunately, on the motorcycle side, it means you're going 10 miles an hour faster with everything you're doing. That cannot be good for the safety record.
There it is. Yeah, Jeremy Saylor in the chat room says, we obviously need speed limits.
Yeah, there you go. I don't. You know what? And everyone's gonna have a theory of how to fix that. Speed limit, sure, throw that in there. It's no less ridiculous than some of the other ideas we've heard. I mean, a lot of people are gonna say, you need to make the displacement smaller or go back to 2 strokes or whatever. Dude, in all other motorsports, they've tried everything. MotoGP has had 800s, 1000s, 1000s, 800s, they keep going back and forth. And what they find is they can't make them slower no matter what they do.
Yep.
They cannot slow it down. It's racing. People are going to figure out a way to either, well, first cheat probably, right? And then B, if you're going to give us this limit, we're going to figure out a way to push that limit to the absolute max. It's just the nature of racing. Hey, I live in North Carolina. There are the NASCAR teams here. There are literally people where their job is to exploit the rule book. Find the fine line between this rule where we can break the rule without getting caught. Like, that's literally their job. That's racing. So I know it sounds easy to just like wave a magic wand and make some rule change that will instantly result in less injuries and better racing and all this. Hard to do, man.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. I don't think there's any way to do that. I think it's definitely kind of the way that it's evolved, and it's just what it is now, and it's very unfortunate. But I think these guys know signing up, when they're signing these contracts, that there's a good chance that practicing. I mean, anything can happen. Like me, we're just practicing to have another kid, and we have one. Oh, Jesus! Like, what the hell?
Right, and they're riding their dirt bike. You're riding whatever. I mean, that's all fun, right?
Yeah, I was having a great time.
Yeah.
It was like 3 months later when she's like, hey, so the P test. I was like, oh, yes! I'm so excited! Woohoo!
Expensive practice session.
Yay! Well, cool. Well, Mr. Weege, if you will, I wanted to know if there had any other, thoughts on the brain. And if not, or if there are, you may ask them and go away. What do you got? Anything?
Well, I do have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
No, you're good. Beginning of the show, you mentioned how impossible it is to spell my last name. No doubt, I'm right there with you. I've had to correct people my entire life. My wife, her maiden name was Nance. Her last name was Nance, Nance. Very easy to say. If you saw it written, you would never mispronounce it. Easy to spell. And if I had taken that as my last name, it would be Jason Nance. The 2 words would even come together. It really would have probably helped my career to be in broadcasting and have a name that's easy to pronounce, spell, look up. But I don't know many dudes that take their wife's last name. So what do you think? Would that have been, if I had done that, if I had told you that I had a maiden name right now, if I had told you, yes, my name is Jason Nance today, but 5 years ago it was Weigandt, would you have made fun of me?
We probably would have had quite the discussion about it, yes.
Okay, so I made the right decision, right? Sticking with what I have.
Yeah, because you got a really good nickname out of the deal, Weege. I think that's a great nickname.
Exclusively based on mispronunciation. So
yeah,
that's what I get.
And you know what your nickname would probably be if you had Nance? They'd just call you Nancy.
Nice.
So
I dodged a bullet.
I think you came out on top in more ways than one. 5 years of marriage has got to be on top at least twice, right?
I prefer it the other way around.
Hey-o, that's okay. Good man.
Yeah.
Good man. Well, dude, I appreciate you being on the show. It's been a fantastic conversation. I like the fact that you're so easy to talk to, and as well, you enjoy talking just like I do. So I can ask you a question, and you're just like, bam! Lots of words that make a lot of sense, and unfortunately, I'm lots of words that don't make any sense. So I appreciate you helping me create such a fantastic episode. It is our last episode for 2013. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. It's going to be fun. But Mr. Weege, where can people find you? Where are your columns and all that kinds of stuff if they were to find out more about you if for some reason they didn't already know who you were?
Yeah, my main job really is the RacerXOnline.com website. I run that on the daily. I'm the editor of it. That's my main deal. That's every 2 hours I got to fill a freaking godforsaken deadline. Am I allowed to use those words? That's
Yes.
the way I feel when I have to do it. That adds up to about 28 stories a week we got to come up with, which is not easy in the off season. So if you want to see stuff that I've come up with, just literally to fill space, that's a good place to do it. And sometimes the stories are also actually informative and good too. So that'll be your little challenge, folks. You go to the site, read it all to try to figure out which ones are filler and which ones are legit. That'll build the traffic.
That's like a challenge, man. That's actually you
Yep.
guys should. That's got to be like a competition or something. You guys,
Maybe we should do that.
I think
the old Motocross Action magazine, apparently one time in the old days, like when photos in a magazine were slides that you had to like put into a machine to scan in, somebody put one in backwards, and the magazine came out and there was a backwards photo, and they didn't want to admit that they made a mistake. So then they started doing it every month as like a trivia contest. Can you find the backwards photo? What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that's fun. I like it. Well, wouldn't you just realize that the name's written backwards? Or, I mean, is it like that much more difficult to realize that a picture is backwards?
Yeah, well, like the numbers would be backwards. But I think once they started doing it on purpose, they were picking photos like a guy, like number 1 might be, or number 11 or something like that. Some numbers are harder to tell. Or maybe they take a photo where you couldn't really see the number clearly. They started getting creative, finding the photo that would be hardest to figure out if it was backwards or not.
Very cool. Well, that's fun. I'm going to have to go back and see if my dad's got any of those older magazines to try to find that kind of stuff.
Yeah, ask him about backwards photo of the month. He'll probably know what I'm talking about.
He's going to be like, the backwards lady of the month? I was like, Dad, wrong magazine. Wrong magazine. Whoa, buddy. Whoa, keep those in the closet, you freak. It's crazy. Well, cool. Well, as I close up shop and do all the house cleaning type stuff, I don't need to keep you on. But again, I really appreciate the time. It was fantastic getting to talk with you. And now that we're friends on Skype, we may just call you in randomly, so be prepared.
Yeah, you're the only friend on Skype I have, so make me feel good. Make me feel like I'm popular.
Oh, I will. You're going to get all kinds of funness. I don't know. Maybe.
Nice.
All right, dude. Well, you have fun tonight, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Brian. Call me back, man, anytime.
You know it. Thanks, dude.
See ya.
All right. Well, cool. So episode 111 has been tons of fun. Lots of information. I think I'm actually going to have to go back and listen to the whole episode again to make sure that I get all of Weege's points across just to myself so I don't have to think as I try to talk back because I'm supposed to be running the show here at the same time. So, but what you have been watching is Seat Time, episode 111. I have to say a big thanks to all of our sponsors. Fly Racing. You can check them out at flyracing.com. Big thing is it's winter time. Now in Texas, it's 70 degrees outside, so things are a little different than what we're used to. But I did notice that they do have their windproof jerseys out now. So you can go to flyracing.com, Moto jerseys, and it's the first one that you come to on that page. These are going to be the hot ticket for riding in cold days. When that cold's back and when those guys are in stock, I'm buying one, I'm wearing it. I think it's going to make winter riding a lot more comfortable because you're not going to need a jacket on in those days where you're kind of like, do I need a jacket on? Do I want a jacket? Am I going a sleeveless vest? What's the idea here? So go check that out. We definitely thank them for their support. They've been behind us for all 3 years. It's been fantastic. Hopefully for 2014 as well. I can't talk to it because nobody's contracts have been signed, if you will. Of course, Powersport Graphics, so ridepg.com. Mr. Bolton, who loves to be in the chat room because he is good at what he does, and he gets in there and just creates the shenanigans for us. We do have a fantastic discount code with RidePG, Powersport Graphics. It is Seat Time, so that way you can just go in there and type Seat Time, a discount code to save yourself some money. You can use that with any other discount that they have. So if they're running a Christmas promo off their website that you want to take advantage of, put the discount code in Seat Time. On top of that, when you call them on the phone, tell them about your custom graphics that you're going to order. Make sure you give them the discount code Seat Time and how much you enjoy the show. And our third sponsor for this evening is Stillwell Performance. So you can find them at stillwellperformance.com. Those guys are fantastic at doing suspension work. A lot of people have been talking about the CS4 forks on the KTMs and how they're so stiff and they're just so moto. These guys spend a lot of time figuring it out and making sure that they can properly prep and redo your suspension for off-road. And you can tell by guys like Cody Webb, Kyle Redmond, Corey Griffunder, that they know what they're doing when it comes to off-road. So you can easily take advantage of that and check them out. So Stillwell Performance. We, of course, thank everybody for their support of Seat Time. Another reminder, we are still running free shipping all of this week. So you can go to seattime.bigcartel.com and you can get free shipping. You see that? That is a really shitty version before it was finalized. But hey, it happens. It's whatever. So you can check it out. We've obviously got our T-shirts. We've still got some of the Beer Olympics pint glasses, and then some of the koozies. So we want to get rid of these Beer Olympic pint glasses so that we can order some more Seat Time ones. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm waiting on a Seat Time pint glass, buy one of these guys. It's free shipping right now, and then you could purchase one of the other ones once we get them back in. Somebody was asking me in the chat room, how is Alan doing? I was talking with Brittany, his daughter, a little bit ago, and it sounds like he's doing awesome. He's up, going on hikes in the morning. Obviously no riding or anything to that degree, but already working the pain meds out of his system, which is fantastic news. So it sounds like Alan's doing really good for what could have been a very, very tragic situation. And he sounds like he's rebounding quite well. So, man, they've been great supporters of Seat Time, and we really thank all those guys. So please go check out all of our sponsors: Fly Racing, Ride PG, Power Sport Graphics, and then, of course, Stillwell Performance. All of them are awesome. Or I can just give you one. I'm not giving you anything, Bolton. I'm not. So, there you go. So this is it, Seat Time. 2013 has been a fantastic year. We've grown a lot. We've learned a lot about the show, how we want to run the show, and we've got a lot of stuff coming up for 2014. We're going to have, I don't know, there might be a new look when you come back in 2 weeks for the studio. There might be some new equipment, which may not mean anything to you, but it's going to mean a shit ton of awesomeness to us. So, yeah, it may not be Ustream anymore. It may be YouTube. There's all kinds of fun stuff that we have in the works, and it's going to be a fun 2 weeks. That mainly we need this to test. We've got a lot of little things that we need to build and test. So it's going to be, an interesting holiday. Right now, when I get done, I just noticed the girls are here. We're going to go ahead and record our Seat Time holiday video, so please be on the lookout for that in the next couple days. It's been a fantastic year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Always enjoy a pint full of awesome. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Peace.